Losing weight is hard unless you do this. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down this made up nutrition metric that I put together to help my clients lose weight without feeling like they're starving themselves or doing some hyper restrictive crash diet. And before I get into the content of the video, I want to make sure that you know who I am. So that way, you know that you can trust me and I'm not just some guy on the internet running my mouth with no history or experience to back this for you. Okay. So my name's Joey Yochheim. I'm the co-owner of defaultkings.com. We work specifically with Christian entrepreneurs to help them lose anywhere from 10 to 50 pounds or more and actually build the consistency to keep it off long term. And since 2019, we've worked with over 600 men. So when it comes to all things weight loss, fat loss, and actually keeping it off long term, I tend to have a general idea of what I'm talking about. So now that you know who I am, now that you know that I'm not just blowing smoke and pulling things from fairy dust here, let's get into the content of the video. Okay. So what makes losing weight hard? The thing that makes it hard is that you have to get into a calorie deficit. And a calorie deficit occurs when you consume fewer calories than your body uses for daily activities and bodily functions. It's literally less than you need, which is objectively not ideal, right? Because it means you're burning more calories than you're taking in. It literally means you aren't getting enough calories. But you have to understand that if you're over fat and if you're overweight, all that excess fat is, all that excess body weight is, and this is not actually scientifically what it is, but for practical purposes here, this is how you can think about it. Right? All it is stored excess calories, which quite literally means you have a buildup, or almost you can think of it like a savings account of calories that you can pull from. And as you pull from it, your body weight drops. So unlike in your financial savings where you're trying to grow that, right? In your calorie savings, you're trying to bleed that out. You're trying to get that savings down all the way to zero. And the way that you do that is by getting in a calorie deficit. You have to be burning more calories than you're consuming. Okay. This is, always has been, and always will be the only way to lose weight. It's a calorie deficit. That's it. Every mainstream fad, trendy diet that you hear of is typically just Trojan horsing for a deficit. And I'll prove it to you. If you think about keto, you completely eliminate carbohydrates, which is a whole entire macronutrient group. So if you eliminate that entire group of foods, chances are you're going to eat less calories, and probably so significantly less that it's reasonable to think you would get into a deficit. Right? Intermittent fasting, same thing. If you go from eating for 16 hours a day to only 4 hours a day, chances are you're going to eat so few calories that you get into a deficit. And this same thing can be applied. We can go down the line for Weight Watchers, for carnivore, for DASH, whatever diet you want to think up. Ultimately, if it's been designed and geared towards weight loss, whatever they are doing, whatever their mechanism is it's just a mechanism that gets you in a calorie deficit. So I'm not at all saying that they don't work. I'm just saying that you have to understand that the true cause is a deficit. It is the fact that you get into a negative energy balance, right? Which is all a calorie deficit is. Right? So you have to understand this at a fundamental level. But you also have to understand that because of the fact you are consuming less than you need, being in a calorie deficit puts you at an inherent disadvantage for basically every other bodily function other than losing weight and losing fat. You will typically feel more hungry, but the point of this video is for me to show you how not to, right? You will feel weaker, right? You will feel more fatigued. Why? Because calorie is just a unit for energy. So if you have less energy coming in, everything that requires energy is going to work worse if you aren't getting enough energy. But even though it sucks, it doesn't suck as bad as staying fat. It's not as bad for you as staying fat, especially if you have that savings account of calories, which you do have if you're overweight or over fat. Right? And being fat is so much worse that it's actually fatal. And somebody somewhere is going to go into the comments and be like, well, if you're in strong enough of a calorie deficit, that's starvation. Okay, thanks, dude, for pointing that out. Everybody knew that, right? But the point is, if you get into the proper calorie deficit, a deficit that allows you to lose weight, not starve to death, right? It is far healthier for you, even though there's negatives to it, than staying over fat and staying overweight. Right? And I don't have to explain this to you, but maybe you weren't aware of it. Obesity kills 300,000 people per year in the United States, and it puts you at higher risk, the highest risk of anything, for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, etc. And the true definition of overfat or overweight is a BMI, body mass index, of over 25. And I get kickback on this all of the time. People will be like, well, I heard BMI isn't a good representation of health or, truly where you're at. And the reality is, yes, there are asterisks to it, like basically any medical statistic ever, there's asterisks. But the odds of you being an asterisk to BMI of 25, not being overweight, not being overfat, is very, very slim. And how I know that is because really, the only time that you would be an exclusion to this is if you have a BMI of over 25 and you have abs and muscle mass, meaning you're sub 15% body fat. Right? That's really the only time you're going to be an exclusion. And if you look at the percentage of the population that actually has visible abs and actually has noticeable enough muscle mass, it's literally only 2% of the population can actually see their abs. Right? They're actually lean enough to see visible abs. Only 2%. Now, I know this is a very loose metric, but what that means is 98% of the population is not an asterisk for BMI. If it says overweight when you do the BMI calculator or when you get a note from the physician, you're probably overweight, man. And if you were an asterisk, you would know. Okay. Asterisks are typically people that are current college athletes, current professional athletes, bodybuilders, coaches, trainers, etc. Okay, people that are in this game. But I could even sit here and make the argument for the bodybuilding extremes where they're guys with a 31 BMI and they do still have abs, or a 35 BMI and they do still have abs because they have so much muscle mass. I could easily sit here and make the argument that is just as bad for you as being a 35 BMI and being morbidly obese and just not having muscle mass at all. It's still too much weight for your organs to handle, right? So that was a longer tangent than I wanted it to be. But chances are, if your BMI is 25 or higher, you are actually overweight, just like it says you are. Okay. Now, how do you actually make a calorie deficit easy? Okay. Well, you have to increase your protein intake without over consuming calories by eating foods with a PCR of 10.0 or more. So PCR is the made up metric that I'm going to explain to you here. This is the golden metric for you to be able to do this. Okay. And what I have found has made a calorie deficit easier on clients is making sure that there's a high protein intake. Right? And I'll explain more on why the high protein intake is beneficial in the next slide. But what can happen is when you tell somebody to go get a certain amount of protein, they kind of throw calorie intake out the window. And this is how you end up with guys that are pit masters, barbecue pit masters, that are 150 pounds overweight. They're eating a ton of protein, animal protein, good proteins. They're getting their pork, their chicken, their beef, but they're getting it from super high fat sources of meat, which leads to them over consuming calories. And that's how you get, again, a pit master or a barbecue guy who eats meat all day, who's 150 pounds overweight. Because he's getting the protein in, but it's coming with an extra 500 calories from fat that he didn't need to have. And he does that 4 times a day, 5 times a day. And now he's over consumed 2,000 calories than he should have. Right? So you not only have to increase your protein intake, you have to increase your protein intake while still staying in a calorie deficit. And you do that by choosing lean protein sources. And this is what PCR allows you to do. It allows you to choose lean protein sources. And 10.0 or more is considered lean. And all PCR stands for is protein to calorie ratio. Okay. A food with a PCR of 10.0, okay, can be defined as a food that has 10 or more grams of protein per 100 calories of that food item. And how you actually find the PCR of a food is by first finding the nutrition facts. You have to read the label or use some sort of a search engine for non-labeled items, meaning just Google how much, or excuse me, you could say, what are the nutrition facts of 80-20 ground beef, right? You can just search it on Google or in MyFitnessPal or some sort of tracking software. Once you find the nutrition facts, you then run this formula, which is the PCR formula. And all it is grams of protein divided by calories times 100 equals PCR. So in this example here, I'm not sure actually what this actually is, the food item, but it doesn't matter. We can still look at it and we can see that there's 3 grams of protein, 230 calories. So you do 3 divided by 230 times 100 equals 1.3. Not a very lean source protein. And this does not mean that you can't have other foods. It just means you have to know that you're taking in quite a bit of calories for not that much protein, and you're going to have to make up for it somewhere else if your plan is to hit your protein goal and stay under your calorie goal. Okay. Second example. Okay. I believe this is whole milk. 8 grams of protein divided by 150 calories, 150 times 100, 5.3. So better than this last one, but still not 10.0. Still not considered a lean source of protein. Last example. This is whey protein. Okay. 24 grams of protein divided by 120 calories times 100, 20.0 PCR. Very lean source of protein. Twice what you should be aiming for, right? And that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just saying it's literally twice the target. This is good. This is great. It's fantastic. Okay. Now, it's important to understand what the max is on PCR, okay? Because 1 gram of protein equals 4 calories. So at most, a food item could have 25 grams of protein per 100 calorie serving. This means the absolute maximum PCR a food item could have is 25.0. So you look at like whey protein or some sort of protein supplement, typically the PCR is going to be very, very high. If you run this calculation and you end up with a number that's over 25.0, you did the calculation wrong. It's impossible. Right? Or the nutrition label is wrong, which is unlikely. Technically, it could happen, but it's very unlikely. Okay, it's very unlikely. Now, why does this PCR metric and why does eating lean sources of protein make losing weight easier? Okay. One is because protein is the most satiating of all the macronutrients. So protein is going to leave you feeling fuller for longer than carbs or fats would. Protein also has the highest thermic effect of all of the macronutrients. What this means is that it costs calories for your body to break down macronutrients. So when your body is breaking down carbs, it's burning calories to break down the carbs. When your body is breaking down fats, it's burning calories to break down the fats. When protein comes in, your body is burning calories to break down the protein. But with protein, it happens to be burning far more calories to break it down than fats and carbs. This is another added benefit. But most importantly, protein is the building block of muscle mass. And muscle mass burns more calories at rest than fat. So the more muscle mass you have, the higher your basal metabolic rate will be. Okay, AKA passive calorie burn. Right? So the more muscle mass that you just have on your frame, you're going to burn more calories at rest, literally while you are sleeping. So the real long game, and the reason that we have all of our clients hit a protein minimum too, not just a calorie limit, even though technically you could lose weight only focusing on a calorie deficit. But we say hit a calorie deficit and hit a protein minimum, because the real long game of sustainability, which is our line of expertise, right? The real long game is help a client build enough muscle while they're losing weight so that once the weight is lost, it's very, very easy for them to keep it off because they now burn more calories at rest because they have more muscle mass on their frame. And protein is the linchpin there. And now it's worth noting, okay, that even though consuming protein has been proven to increase your muscle mass, even without adding in a resistance training protocol, I recommend that you couple your high protein diet with resistance training 3 to 5 times a week to maximize your muscle gain. Okay. So technically you don't have to, but it's highly recommended. And you're going to experience way better results if you couple it with resistance training, like lifting weights, kettlebells, resistance bands, push-ups, calisthenics, whatever you want to call a resistance exercise. Okay. Now, little bonus here, right? The other thing here is that you need to be focusing on high volume foods. Okay. And this is a bonus. This isn't a have to, but I really think you should. And what high volume foods are is foods that take up a lot of space in your stomach, which helps you feel satiated for very few calories. Right? This is why if you think about a salad, if you think about literally like a massive salad and it's just lettuce and spinach and whatever other vegetables that you want to put in there, if you were to eat all that, it literally like actually just takes up a lot of space. And so you have to squeeze all that down, chew all that down into your stomach. It literally fills up your stomach, which triggers to your hunger cues that you're full. It's the same reason where if you go and you chug water when you're hungry, if you chug enough water, you're not going to feel hungry anymore because it's just taking up space in your stomach. Now, as soon as that water is absorbed, you're going to feel hungry again, right? But it's a little different with fruits and vegetables because it takes longer to break down. It doesn't just absorb like water, but it's the same idea. It's going to fill up space in your stomach and trigger that you are full, which is going to prevent you from overeating calories, right? The best thing to get this from is fruits, vegetables, egg whites, non-fat Greek yogurt, non-fat cottage cheese. These are all great high volume options. Okay. Very low calorie, but take up a lot of space in your stomach, really help you feel full. Okay. Now, that is it in terms of how you actually do this and how you can actually make weight loss a whole lot easier on yourself. Now, if you are somebody that's watching this and you're interested in working with me directly, all you need to do is you got to go to defaultkings.com, book a free fat loss assessment, and see if we can help you lose 10 to 50 pounds or more. And if it's something that you're not completely interested in joining one of our coaching programs yet, then just subscribe to our free daily newsletter or join our free Fit Through Faith men's group using the links in the description below. Here's some results of our guys, and there's hundreds of pictures like this on defaultkings.com. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, send it to your friends that need to lose some weight, and hopefully we'll make the world a little less obese. Thanks for watching.